The wind had teeth that night, snapping at coats and crawling down spines. Snow drifted sideways in the alleys behind the saloon, where lamplight didn't reach and breath turned to fog before it ever left the mouth. Wes Calder didn't mind the cold. Not anymore. Not since silence had settled on his life like ash on a dying fire. He hitched his horse behind the livery, hands stiff from reins and rope burns, boots caked in a mix of snow and livestock filth. His coat was too thin for this kind of night, but he didn't go to town for comfort. He came to sell off 2 more calves, half-starved things, just to keep feed in the barn. That was how it was now. Trading pieces of the ranch just to hold on to what little remained. The streets were quiet. Most folks were at the saloon or curled up by stoves. He just stepped into the alley shortcut behind Cooper's when he heard it. A cough. Not loud. Not the gravel-throated hack of a drunk. This one was small. High-pitched. Like it came from something half-sized and barely hanging on. Wes stopped, turned his head. Another cough followed, then a soft shuffle of movement, and finally, words, barely whispered. "Don't tell no one. Mama said wait here." He crouched slowly, his shadow stretching long over the snow-slick cobbles. Between 2 stacked crates and a splintered barrel, 2 small shapes huddled together. One girl, 6 years at best, had her arms wrapped around another just like her. Same tangled hair, same too big dress cinched with a bit of ribbon. Twins. Matching smudges on their cheeks like they'd fallen face-first in coal dust. One girl stared straight at him. The other buried her face in her sister's chest and trembled. "You girls lost?" Wes asked, voice low, calm like he was talking to a spooked foal. The one looking at him shook her head once, fast. "We ain't supposed to talk to men." "I ain't asking you to," he murmured, shrugging off his coat. "Just cold out here. Take this." He draped the coat over them. Neither moved. The brave one blinked slow, lips turning purple. The silent one coughed again, a wet sound that rattled more than it should have. "Where's your mama?" She said wait here till the train whistles twice. Wes frowned. No train was coming tonight. The last had gone through at dusk, and the next wouldn't roll in till midday tomorrow. These girls had been left, and not by mistake. He reached into his vest and pulled out the only warm thing he had left, a strip of jerky, dry as bark but something to chew. The brave twin took it, hesitated, then broke it in half and handed it to the other. She still hadn't looked up. Wes felt something shift in his chest. He knelt beside them. "You come with me. Got a stove and a bedroll. Just till morning." The bold one squinted. "You a sheriff?" He shook his head. "No, ma'am." She studied him for a long moment, then reached under the coat and tugged the smaller girl to stand. That's when he saw the bare feet, red, cracked, raw as butchered meat. They didn't say another word as he lifted one into each arm. They were light as fence posts. Neither girl resisted. One of them laid her head on his shoulder. The other whispered something in his ear. Whatever it was, it stopped him cold. He didn't respond, didn't move for a heartbeat too long. Then he adjusted his grip and kept walking, jaw clenched, eyes fixed forward. He didn't glance back at the alley, though the wind howled like it wanted him to. At the ranch, the fire had long gone to coals. He lit a new one with shaking hands. The girl sat wrapped in his coat while he boiled water, poured it into 2 chipped mugs with a little milk and molasses. The brave one drank. The other stared into the cup like it held ghosts. He found a shirt of his they could sleep in, too big, but warm. He rolled it over both of them like a tent, laid them on the cot where his daughter used to sleep, before fever took her in spring. He didn't sleep. He sat by the fire, knees drawn up, hands dangling between. Listened to the wind claw the window panes. Kept watching their faces. How even in sleep, the quiet one frowned. Like rest didn't reach her. The brave one stirred once, mumbled in her sleep. Just one word. "Papa." That word broke something. He rose slowly, walked out onto the porch, the wind knifing through his shirt like he deserved it. He looked out across the snow-heavy fields, to the barns sagging with years and regret. He had no idea who they were, where they came from, or what that whisper meant. But he knew one thing. They weren't going back to that alley. Not ever. By the time morning carved pale light across the horizon, the frost had set thick on the fence rails and the fire in Wes's hearth had burned down to a soft glow. The girls hadn't stirred much during the night, except the quiet one. She whimpered now and then, not loud, like she was used to crying without being heard. Wes hadn't closed his eyes. He'd sat in the rocker the whole time, one hand near the rifle, the other clutching a mug that had long since gone cold. Not because he expected trouble, but because something about those girls, especially the whisper the bold one had offered in the alley, had left him unsettled. She says you're the first man who didn't look away. He didn't know what to do with that. By the time the rooster started in, the girls were awake but didn't speak. He made them corn mush with a bit of sugar and milk. The brave one, he'd started thinking of her as the older twin, though they looked the same, ate with caution. The quiet one just sat, legs swinging, spoon untouched. Wes saddled the gelding and told Emery, his half-deaf ranch hand, to keep an eye on the place. Didn't say why. Emery didn't ask. Wes didn't lie much, but if someone came poking, he figured silence served better than words. In town, the wind had settled but the whispers hadn't. The general store buzzed with morning chatter. Coffee, rope, rifle oil. When Wes pushed open the door, a small bell jingled overhead and every face turned. Not in greeting. In curiosity. Mavis Ellery stood behind the counter, her bun tight, her gaze tighter. "Well now," she drawled, eyes skimming the extra blanket slung over his saddle pack. "Didn't expect to see you in this early. Heard you came in late last night. What were you doing behind Cooper's?" Wes didn't blink. "My horse threw a shoe near the alley. Had to go round." "Ha!" Mavis muttered, folding a gingham apron. "Funny. Thought I saw two little shadows under your coat when you left." He didn't answer. Behind him, someone muttered, "Ain't those the Hart girls?" That name hadn't passed anyone's lips in a year, not since Delilah Hart had vanished. Once the preacher's golden daughter, she'd fallen hard and fast after rumors spread of her condition. No father named. No husband offered. Just judgment and silence and then gone. "Preacher Hart's girl," another woman whispered too loudly. "They had twins. Looked just like her, poor things." Mavis stepped forward now, voice hushed but sharp. Wes called her. "You ain't harboring those girls, are you?" He set a tin of coffee on the counter. "You selling or preaching?" Mavis narrowed her eyes but took the money. He left with the goods and a trail of eyes following him. Back at the ranch, the wind had picked up again, and smoke from the chimney curled like a warning. He dismounted slowly, bags in hand, and paused. A rider approached from the east trail. Not a friend. Sheriff Dobbins. Wes turned as the man drew up, wide-brimmed hat low over sun-battered features, hand resting casually on the pommel of his saddle. "Morning, Calder," the sheriff said. "Mind if I water my horse?" Wes didn't answer, just nodded toward the trough. Dobbins dismounted, led the horse over, let it drink, then leaned against the post. "Heard some talk," the sheriff began. "'Bout a couple kids matching a certain description. You know anything about that?" "Nope." "Sure you don't." They stood in silence for a long moment. Only the creak of the barn doors and the distant scream of a hawk broke the stillness. The sheriff scratched his chin. "Mayor's concerned. Says if those are the Hart girls, they might be in danger. Says he wants them found. Safe and sound, of course." "Safe don't mean the same thing to everyone," Wes said. "No, it don't," the sheriff agreed. "But law's the law. If you're hiding them—" "I'm not." Dobbins tilted his head. "Then you won't mind me having a look around." Wes stepped forward, blocking the path. "You got a warrant?" The sheriff's lips curled into something almost like a smile. "Not yet. But I'll be back." He mounted again. "Between us, Wes, folks don't forget a face. Especially one tied to sin and shame. You get caught up in it, might be you fall too." With that, he rode off. Wes turned slowly. The bold twin was standing in the doorway, watching. No fear on her face. Just something old and quiet and waiting. That night, the wind blew harder, and a storm started rolling in. Thunder grumbled far off, slow and heavy. Wes lit the lantern and pulled his chair near the girls. The bold one finally asked, "Why you help us?" He stirred his coffee. "Didn't feel right to leave you." She studied him. "Most folks do. They shouldn't." Silence settled like dust. Then a knock. 3 soft raps. Then silence again. He stood slowly, rifle in hand, and opened the door. A woman stood there, hood pulled low, dress soaked, one boot missing. Her arms wrapped around her waist like she was holding herself together with will alone. Then she collapsed. Wes caught her before she hit the porch boards. He carried her in, laid her by the fire, and pulled the coat up over her. The girls rushed forward. "Mama." The quiet one finally spoke, only one word, so soft it felt like a prayer. Wes stared down at her face. Dirt-caked, hollow-cheeked. But he knew her. Delilah Hart. The girl everyone in town had forgotten. Or tried to. Her eyes flickered open, just once. "You didn't look away," she whispered. Then she slept. And Wes knew this wasn't over. Whatever storm had chased her here wasn't done. Not yet. The storm broke by morning, not in thunder or wind, but in quiet cold. Ice glazed the fence rails, and the sky hung low like a bruise. Wes sat beside the fire, watching Delilah Hart sleep. Her breathing had steadied, but her skin was pale as ash and her lips chapped from too many nights out in the open. She hadn't said another word since the night before, not since she'd whispered that sentence into the firelight like it burned her to say it. "You didn't look away." The girls lay curled beside her now, both still in sleep. Wes watched their chests rise and fall in perfect rhythm. One of them, he still hadn't asked their names, had her hand resting on Delilah's ribs, as if guarding her in sleep. He rose slow, careful not to stir them. The coffee tasted burnt, but he drank it anyway. Outside, the snow hadn't let up, but someone had come through. He could see it now, hoofprints leading from the main trail, pressed deep into the frost, circling the barn once like a snake checking for holes. By noon, the knock came. 3 sharp raps, no hesitation. Wes opened the door and found Sheriff Dobbins standing there again, coat stiff with cold, eyes colder still. Behind him, 2 deputies shifted on horseback. One looked too young to shave. The other had the loose scowl of a man who liked being obeyed. "You knew I'd be back," Dobbins said. "I figured," Wes replied. "You gonna let me in this time?" "Nope." The sheriff held up a folded paper, hand steady. "Got my warrant now. Signed by Judge Ellsworth himself. You're harboring fugitives. The mayor's demanding their return." "They're children," Wes said, not moving. "They're still wards of the territory until proven otherwise." "And the woman inside?" "She's under suspicion of abandonment, vagrancy, and false testimony against a public official." Wes's jaw tensed. Funny how quick those charges come when a man feels threatened. "I'm just doing my job." "You do it, then." Wes stepped aside, hand hovering near the butt of the rifle resting on the table just behind the door. "Not reaching. Just reminding." Dobbins stepped in alone, hat dripping snowmelt. He looked around the small cabin, fire crackling, biscuits cooling on the stove, 2 worn blankets neatly folded in the corner. Then his eyes found her. Delilah sat up slowly from the cot, arms around the twins, her face drawn tight with fear she didn't bother hiding. Her voice rasped low. "I didn't leave them. I hid them." "From what?" Dobbins asked. "From him," she answered. "The man who put me in this mess." Wes watched as something flickered across the sheriff's face. Recognition. Hesitation. But it passed quick. "That a formal accusation?" he asked. Delilah nodded once. "Mayor Haskins. He's the one who—" She stopped, eyes glassing over. "He said no one would believe a preacher's daughter over him. And no one did. So I ran." The room held its breath. Dobbins looked to Wes. That true? She's telling it, Wes said quietly. That ought to count for something. You know what this means, Calder? You obstructed an investigation. I gave 2 cold children a place to sleep. And her. I gave her the same. The sheriff exhaled through his nose. She's got to come in. Statements. Questions. There's a process. She's not strong enough, Wes said. I don't make exceptions. You do today. Behind him, the young deputy shifted in the doorway. Sheriff, he said low, might be better to. You stay quiet, Dobbins snapped. This is my call. Delilah rose slowly, her legs trembling, but she stood. I'll come, she said. But I want my girls safe. You promise me that I won't run again. No one's promised you anything, the sheriff said. I do, Wes said, stepping forward. They stay with me. Dobbins turned toward him, anger creeping in now. You think this is some fairy tale, Calder? You think you get to play savior? You're 1 step from losing your land and you want to take on 2 more mouths. Wes didn't blink. I lost a child once. Don't aim to lose another. The sheriff scoffed. This ain't your child. It might as well be. Outside, the wind picked up. The kind that rattled loose shutters and whispered warnings. Dobbins looked at Delilah again, at her hand resting on the quiet twin's shoulder. You still gonna say the mayor laid hands on you? Delilah's voice was a whisper, but it held no tremble. I'll say it. I'll scream it. You got proof? No. Just scars. That held for a long moment. Then Dobbins lowered the warrant. Not torn, not withdrawn. Just lowered. You got 3 days, he said to Wes. 3. After that, if she don't come to town and make a statement official, I come back with more than paper. He stepped out without another word. Wes shut the door behind him, slow and heavy. Delilah sat back down. The girls moved in close. One wiped her nose on her sleeve. The other stared at the door like it might knock again any second. Wes knelt beside them. You okay? Delilah nodded faintly. For now. He studied her face. New shadows there. She hadn't spoken much before today. But now the air between them felt cracked open, real in a way it hadn't before. Why'd you run this far? He asked. Delilah's voice was dry. Because anywhere else, someone might know me. And here. Here I hoped no one would. Wes leaned back, slow. They remember you anyway. She gave a hollow smile. People don't forget a face. Wes stood, moved to the stove, poured her a fresh mug of coffee. Maybe it's time they remember the whole story. She took the mug with trembling hands. That night, the wind died down. The fire burned long. And from the front porch, Wes watched the sheriff's trail disappear into falling snow, already half covered by morning. The frost hadn't lifted for 3 days. Each dawn brought a sky stained with cold light, and each night returned colder than the last. Wes chopped wood with rhythm, not rage, each strike of the axe as precise as a heartbeat. Inside the cabin, the girls were quiet but steadier now, helping where they could. They moved in tandem, twin shadows warmed by firelight and watchfulness, never far from their mother's side. Delilah had been speaking more. Not much, but enough. She sat near the fire with a blanket draped across her lap, threading needles or darning worn socks. Her shoulders had loosened some. The tightness in her eyes softened whenever Wes handed her something without asking, without expecting anything in return. You keep moving like a man who don't know how to stop, she said one morning, not looking up from her stitching. I stop. Just not for long, he answered. You always been alone? He paused, leaning on the doorframe. Not always. She nodded slowly. Me neither. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was understood. Some lives weren't carved from noise and declarations. Some were shaped in quiet, like wood worn smooth from years of wind and use. But trouble, like winter, didn't wait for permission to return. That afternoon, Emery came riding hard from town, his horse lathered and panting. Wes stepped onto the porch before he even reached the gate. "They're coming," Emery called. "The sheriff. The mayor. Half the town behind him. Said she never showed. Said you've had your last chance." Wes didn't move. Delilah stepped outside behind him, shawl clutched around her. Her eyes flicked to Emery, then to Wes. "I can go," she whispered. "It'll save you." "No," Wes said. "You ran once to protect them. I don't run. They'll take the girls. They won't get past me." Emery dismounted, his hands shaking. "Wes, listen. It's not just Dobbins this time. The mayor's bringing papers. Judges. A preacher. Gonna say he's acting as guardian of the territory." "That man." Delilah spat. "Guardian." The word sounded like a curse on her tongue. Wes stepped back into the cabin and opened a drawer beneath the table. From it, he pulled out a sheet of paper, already signed. He handed it to Emery. "Ride to town. Give this to Mavis. Tell her to show it to everyone who'll look." "What is it?" Delilah asked. "A land deed," Wes said. "I signed over part of the ranch. To you and the girls. Legal and binding. If they're gonna drag us through court, I aim to walk in with something of my own." Delilah stared at him. "Why would you do that?" He met her eyes. "Because I buried a child once. I ain't burying another." She said nothing, but her fingers gripped the shawl tighter. The sun dipped low, casting the whole field in golden fire. Then they came. 6 riders. Sheriff Dobbins at the front. Mayor Haskins beside him, smug and polished in a dark wool coat that didn't belong to this land. Behind them, 2 men with rifles, and a preacher whose face Wes didn't recognize, but whose eyes slid sideways whenever Delilah looked his way. Wes walked out to meet them alone, no rifle in sight. Just him, bareheaded in the wind, boots rooted in the earth like he belonged to it. Dobbins reined in. "We're not here to make a scene, Wes. You brought half the damn town." The mayor stepped forward. "We're here to collect the girls and the woman. They've no business on this property. That warrant stands. She failed to present herself. That's abandonment of legal process." "Your process was never justice," Wes said. "It was punishment. For surviving you." The mayor's smile thinned. "She's a liar." Delilah stepped forward now. The girls came with her, 1 on each side. They stood behind Wes like they were stepping into his shadow for shelter. "I'm not a liar," she said. "I'm a mother." "You're an outlaw," Haskins sneered. "You seduced a man of the cloth, then cried wolf." "That man of the cloth was you," she snapped. "You wore the title while breaking everything behind closed doors." The preacher shifted uncomfortably. Dobbins frowned. Wes held up a hand. "You want to talk law? Here's the law." He handed the document to the sheriff. "Signed. Witnessed. Registered. These girls are now legal heirs of this ranch, which makes them under my protection. Any man lays a hand on them has to answer to me, and to the deed." The sheriff looked it over. Then again. The mayor moved to snatch it, but Dobbins held firm. "This is valid." "No, it ain't," Haskins barked. "This man's just trying to cover his own guilt." Then a new voice rose behind them. "You ought to think real hard before you accuse a man in front of witnesses." It was Mavis. She'd come on foot, breathless but steady, with half the store trailing her. Old men, curious wives, even 2 of the stable hands from the livery. Not all of them sympathetic, but enough to watch. Mavis raised a hand, clutching a folded letter. "This here's a sworn affidavit from a doctor in Blue Ridge. Says the girl, Delilah, came in with injuries consistent with assault. Says she refused to name her attacker. But someone else was with her. A woman from town. Said she saw a man leaving the back of the preacher's house in the middle of the night. Dobbins looked at the mayor. You wanna tell me who that was? Haskins turned red. This is nonsense. Is it? Mavis said. 'Cause the woman who gave that statement was my cousin. And she don't lie. The crowd murmured. Not loud. Just enough to crack the air. Delilah clutched her daughters tighter. Haskins looked around, at the watchers, at the cold faces, at the rifle on the deputy's shoulder, and at Wes, who hadn't moved an inch. She ruined me, the mayor growled. You ruined yourself, Wes said. Dobbins cleared his throat. We're done here. He turned his horse. The preacher followed. The deputies hesitated, then did the same. Haskins stayed a moment longer, fuming. You'll regret this, he hissed. Wes stared at him, slow and steady. Already did. A year ago, when I buried a child in the cold. You don't scare me. The mayor turned and rode off, the snow swallowing his tracks before the wind could. By the time the watchers dispersed, the light had gone gold across the field, painting the cabin in peace. Delilah didn't speak for a long time. Just stood there, watching the path where the riders disappeared. The girls tugged at her skirt, and she finally knelt to their level. You're safe, she whispered. Then the quiet one did something she hadn't before. She stepped forward and tugged at Wes's coat. He bent down. She leaned in and whispered in his ear. Delilah watched, unsure. Wes didn't speak, but something in his face broke open. Something soft. His eyes turned glassy, but he smiled, not wide, not bold. Just enough. What did she say? Delilah asked. He looked at her. She said, You look like someone worth staying for. Delilah exhaled. Her shoulders dropped. Then she laughed once. Tired, hoarse, but real. Inside, the fire crackled. Wes stepped aside, holding the door for them. The four of them went in together. And the wind outside finally quieted. Which city are you watching our video from? Please leave a comment. Please subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you.